Now, Chair recognizes Mr. Min from California.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for convening this hearing. Let's start at the outset by just stating the obvious. Waste, fraud, and abuse are horrible. They're stealing from taxpayers. They're taking money and food out of the mouths of hungry kids. I have spent my career fighting against fraud. I started my career at the SEC, prosecuting corporate fraud, continued on as a law professor, teaching the next generation. And as someone on the Oversight Committee, this is a very, very important issue to me. Again, every dollar that is stolen from these programs is a dollar that's not just taken from us hardworking taxpayers. It is something that is meant for a better use. And so I appreciate the gist of this hearing, but as I pointed out in prior hearings on allegations of fraud in Minnesota, the singular and exclusive focus on the Somalian community in Minnesota seems very partisan and wrong, because we know there's massive fraud across this country, particularly in southern states, including states like Florida and Mississippi. Mississippi is still at trial right now, over $77 million in welfare fraud. Federal prosecutors have recently arrested a Russian national accused of submitting billions of dollars in fraudulent schemes in Texas and Florida. And of course, Oklahoma and Alabama consistently rank as the highest states when it comes to SNAP fraud. And yet we've only focused on Minnesota. Why? As a freshman member, I've been here 14 months, but I've learned that their House Republicans are all single-issue voters with just a handful of exceptions. And that single issue, the only thing that you all care about is whether you're on Team Trump or not. And so when Donald Trump goes after Minnesota and falsely claims that he won the election there 3 times and that it was rigged against him, I pay close attention. When he says that he would no longer admit Somalians to this country because they contribute, quote, nothing to this country, I listen. That's a wildly racist statement, but it's going to reflect what Republicans are going to do, and that is why we're holding this hearing. I care about welfare fraud, and I care about the scumbags who rip off taxpayer money. But if this was about welfare fraud, we'd be also hauling in people like Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves and former NFL quarterback Brett Favre, who clearly knew about a scheme to send money to build a volleyball facility at the college his daughter was playing at, receive funds for $600,000 or more for work that he never did from the government, again, taking money from the mouths of children that are hungry. No, this hearing is not about welfare fraud. It's about placating Donald Trump. This committee is holding this hearing for the same reasons that it's ignoring the massive corruption we know that Donald Trump is engaged in his family, soliciting bribes from foreign governments and private companies in exchange for regulatory favor, for the same reason that Republicans are protecting pedophiles right now and that the DOJ is right now actively deleting Epstein files while we're at war with Iran. It's why they ignore their oath to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. It's why we're holding hearings on this rather than on ICE abuses or the fact that Donald Trump just took us into war without even consulting with Congress, let alone getting our authorization for military use or force or actual declaration of war in direct contravention of the Constitution of the United States.
Congressional hearings are usually predictable, but sometimes a single speech changes the entire room. In a fiery moment on Capitol Hill, a congressman launched into a blistering critique of the hearing itself, arguing that the investigation wasn't really about fraud at all. Instead, he claimed it was about politics, immigration, and loyalty to one man. The room went silent as accusations of corruption, racism, and political theater flew across the chamber. So what actually happened during this explosive hearing? And why is this moment spreading across political media right now? Let's break it down. The congressman began with something nearly everyone agrees on: waste, fraud, and abuse of taxpayer money. These aren't minor problems. They directly impact government programs meant to help vulnerable Americans, especially children who depend on food assistance. He emphasized that every stolen dollar has real consequences. Less money for programs, less help for families, less trust in government institutions, and he made it clear, fighting fraud has been a central part of his career, from prosecuting corporate crime to teaching law students about accountability. At first the tone seemed straightforward, but then the speech took a dramatic turn. The focus of the hearing was alleged fraud tied to programs in Minnesota, but the congressman challenged that focus. He pointed out that welfare fraud cases have appeared across the country, particularly in other states where investigations have uncovered large-scale schemes. For example, millions of dollars in alleged welfare fraud cases, federal arrests connected to massive fraud operations, states consistently ranking high for SNAP fraud violations. Yet according to him, those cases were not the subject of this congressional hearing, which raised the central question he kept repeating: why Minnesota? His answer was blunt: politics. He argued that the hearing was designed to reinforce a political narrative rather than examine the full scope of fraud nationwide. The most controversial part of the speech came next. The congressman claimed the investigation was tied to broader political messaging around immigration. He referenced statements made during past political campaigns that targeted specific immigrant communities. According to his argument, those narratives influenced which issues Congress chooses to spotlight. In his view, the hearing served a political goal appealing to voters aligned with former President Donald Trump. This accusation turned a policy debate into a full-blown political confrontation. Suddenly, the hearing was no longer just about fraud, it was about power, messaging, and influence inside Congress. And that's when the speech went even further. The congressman didn't stop at the hearing itself. He expanded his criticism to what he called selective oversight. He argued that if Congress truly wanted to expose fraud, it would also investigate other high-profile controversies involving government funds. He also accused lawmakers of ignoring issues like government accountability, immigration enforcement controversies, and executive power during military actions. The message was clear. Oversight, he argued, should be consistent, not selective, not partisan, and not driven by political loyalty. After the speech, attention shifted to a practical issue.
For those of us who care about taxpayer dollars, let's focus on that. This is horrible, but of course, we have seen instead a different type of abuse of our taxpayer dollars. They've taken our taxpayer dollars and used them to fund abuses against our American people, as a number of our witnesses have aptly described. And I want to just point out that until the murder of Alex Preddy, not a single DHS or ICE agent accused of wrongdoing, witnessed or videotaped assaulting Americans was suspended, faced any disciplinary action. That doesn't happen with police. When my local law enforcement are accused of misconduct, certainly if they're videotaped shooting someone, they are subject to an investigation. Maybe they're justified or not, but they're suspended, removed from duty, investigated. None of that has happened until the murder of Alex Preddy and the outrage around that. Now, Governor Walz, I want to just briefly ask you, what's the economic impact that the deployment of ICE in Minnesota has had over the past few months?
Well, thank you, Congressman. I thank you for your characterization. I associate myself with you on fraud is horrific. It is corrosive. It hurts those people that are there, and taxpayers should demand accountability. And I think that's what we're trying to take. The issue can, again...
What's the economic impact? I know business...
Look, for us, we just had our economic numbers, and I would tell people that we have to balance the budget every year. Minnesota is strongly, we're AAA bond rated. That shows up good. It doesn't account for what happened over the last 3 months. And by estimates, the city of Minneapolis estimates they lost $200 million alone. And I remind people, you saw pictures of Minneapolis. This happened across the state. Near my hometown of Mankato, Minnesota, in St. Peter, we saw a woman that was pulled over at gunpoint, a citizen. The chilling effect it had, businesses going under, especially immigrant-owned businesses, people who are here legally, citizens, starting businesses. We're shut down.
I'm just going to reclaim my time to make one final point here. I was at Minneapolis, had the chance to meet with you and others. I also met with a number of local police chiefs, and one of the things they told me, first, this is not the first time ICE has operated in Minnesota. But in the past, what is different about this time is that they did not coordinate. They did not tell anyone. And that resulted in a lot of 911 calls, because when you see masked men jumping out of vans, pulling people out, assaulting them, punching them in the head, as happens all the time with ICE agents. And by the way, that's not a matter of training. It's a matter of picking people who are predisposed to violence. That costs our local police quite a lot of money. It's one of the reasons I'm going to be introducing the Recoup Act so that local jurisdictions are repaid for the funds that they expend due to ICE misconduct.
Immigration enforcement meant for Minnesota's economy. According to testimony during the hearing, aggressive enforcement operations allegedly had ripple effects across local communities. Officials claim businesses, particularly immigrant-owned ones, experienced significant disruptions. Some estimates suggested major economic losses in major cities, and local law enforcement reportedly faced unexpected costs responding to emergency calls during enforcement operations. This sparked a new policy idea introduced during the hearing, a proposal that would require federal agencies to reimburse local governments for costs tied to certain enforcement actions. Whether that proposal moves forward remains uncertain, but it shows how the debate is expanding beyond politics into economic policy. Before we get to the final takeaway, quick question. Do you think this hearing was about real fraud investigations or political messaging? Let everyone know in the comments. And if you enjoy breaking down viral political moments like this, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next deep dive. This moment highlights something bigger than a single hearing. It reveals how deeply divided Washington has become. Even when lawmakers agree that fraud should be stopped, they often disagree on where to look and why. One side sees necessary investigations, the other sees political targeting, and in the middle of it all are the taxpayers watching closely to see whether Congress is focused on real solutions or political battles. One thing is certain, moments like this don't stay inside the hearing room, they quickly spread across media, shaping the national debate, and judging by the intensity of this exchange, this fight is far from over.